Most people think of their fridge as the safest place in the kitchen, the one place where bacteria cannot reach, where food is genuinely protected, where you put something and it stays fresh until you need it. That assumption is wrong, and it is costing you money every single week in food that goes bad faster than it should. 3 food safety experts, including a Rutgers University microbiologist, the director of the Food Systems and Safety Program at Clemson University, and a food safety specialist at the University of Georgia, all say the same thing. Your fridge is home to a whole microbial ecosystem, and most people have no idea what is living in there or how it is affecting the food they spent money on. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what is growing in your fridge, where it concentrates, and the 3 specific things you can do right now that actually work to keep your food fresh significantly longer. Let me start with what actually lives in your fridge, because this is the part that most people find genuinely surprising. If you swabbed a fridge shelf and had it analyzed in a lab, you would predominantly find what are called spoilage organisms. These are bacteria and fungi that thrive specifically in cold, damp environments, and their entire biological purpose is to break food down over time. The most significant group among them are called psychotrophic microorganisms, and the most common of these is a bacterium called Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas and other psychotrophs are responsible for spoiling refrigerated animal products and can also live on produce. Here is the part that catches people off guard. They show up in pasteurized foods either because some organisms or spoilage enzymes survive the pasteurization process or because contamination happens afterward during packaging or handling. This is why your milk can still go bad even though it has been pasteurized. The pasteurization killed most things but not all, and your fridge is actually a perfectly hospitable environment for what survived. An Italian study from the University of Padua sampled 293 domestic refrigerators and found that roughly half had microbial counts that would be considered unacceptable by food industry standards. Half, not a small number of poorly maintained fridges, half of the ordinary home refrigerators that were tested. That study gives you a sense of how common this problem actually is and why the experts take it seriously. Now, spoilage bacteria are not the same as pathogens. The Rutgers microbiologist Donald Schaffner makes this distinction clearly. A pathogen will make you sick. A spoilage organism makes food gross. Spoilage bacteria cause your vegetables to wilt, your milk to sour, and your leftovers to develop off flavors and smells. That is unpleasant and wasteful, but it is not typically dangerous. The dangerous organisms are the pathogens, and most of them, including Salmonella and E. coli, do not grow well in cold temperatures. They survive in your fridge, but they do not multiply quickly. The exception, and this is the one both Schaffner and Kimberly Baker at Clemson flagged as most concerning, is Listeria monocytogenes. Listeria is genuinely unusual because it is one of the very few pathogens that actively grows in refrigerator temperatures. It is most commonly found on deli meats, hot dogs, soft cheeses, and prepackaged leafy greens. Schaffner notes that Listeria generally requires high doses to make most healthy adults sick, but those most at risk, particularly immunocompromised individuals and pregnant women, need to be genuinely careful with these food categories. Your fridge also hosts fungi, molds and yeasts that, like the psychotrophic bacteria, continue to grow in cold environments. Research on home refrigerators has identified Penicillium, Cladosporium, and Botrytis as among the most common genera present. These are the organisms behind the blue-green bloom on a soft lemon, the dark patches on stored vegetables, and the fuzzy gray rot on strawberries. The good news is that according to both Baker and Schaffner, fridge mold is primarily a spoilage concern rather than a safety one. The mycotoxins that some molds produce typically require heavy, visible growth to reach dangerous levels, and by that point, you would have almost certainly already thrown the food away. So where does all of this concentrate in your fridge? According to the Italian study, the bottom shelf is the most common site of high microbial counts. This makes sense because it receives drips and spills from everything above it. Beyond that, the experts point to 2 specific locations that most people never clean properly. The first is the produce drawers. The grooves and edges of crisper drawers are particularly prone to bacterial and mold accumulation, because they are difficult to access and rarely get a proper wipe down. Baker says these drawers are one of the dirtiest places in the entire fridge. The second location is the rubber gaskets that seal the fridge door. These can become havens for mold, sometimes appearing as gray, pink, or black smudges that are easy to overlook during regular cleaning. The door shelves also matter in a different way. They experience the most temperature fluctuation because they are exposed to room temperature air every time you open the fridge. And temperature fluctuation, it turns out, has a massive effect on how quickly bacteria grow. Schaffner provides a specific and striking example. Pseudomonas grows 60% faster at 42 degrees Fahrenheit compared to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. To translate that into something you can feel, if your milk usually lasts 7 days at 42 degrees, lowering the temperature to 35 degrees extends its shelf life to more than 11 days. Same milk, same fridge, just a 7-degree difference in temperature, and you get nearly double the shelf life. Now let me give you the 3 things that actually work, straight from the experts. The first and most impactful thing you can do is set your fridge to 36 degrees Fahrenheit and verify that temperature with a fridge thermometer rather than relying on what the dial says. Most people set a temperature and assume the fridge is actually hitting it. But the setting and the actual temperature inside can differ, and the experts recommend 36 degrees specifically because it accounts for the natural fluctuations that happen every time you open the door. At this temperature, you are close to the point where most spoilage organisms slow down significantly, and you get meaningfully longer shelf life on nearly everything you store. The second fix is cleaning up spills immediately, including ones that look like just water. Schaffner identifies spills as the primary driver of bacterial transfer between surfaces in your fridge. Juice from raw meat is the obvious example, but this also applies to water from a filter pitcher, condensation from a partially opened produce bag, or anything else wet. The moment moisture sits on a fridge shelf, it creates a hospitable environment for the organisms already present. Cleaning spills as soon as you notice them and giving your crisper drawers and door gaskets a proper wipe down regularly removes the conditions that allow microbial populations to build up over time. The third fix is using your produce drawers correctly. The crisper drawers on most refrigerators have humidity controls, and very few people use them as intended. One drawer should be set to high humidity, which helps leafy greens and vegetables retain the moisture they need to stay crisp. The other drawer should be set to low humidity, which allows ethylene gas to escape. Ethylene is a natural gas that many fruits produce as they ripen, and it accelerates ripening in nearby produce. Keeping ethylene-producing fruits in a low-humidity drawer that lets the gas escape slows that process down. On top of this, food safety specialist Carla Schwann recommends eating the most perishable items earlier in the week. Use berries and leafy greens in the first few days. Save carrots, cabbage, and apples for later in the week when they will still be at their best. This simple sequencing prevents the most waste. The broader takeaway from all 3 experts is worth sitting with for a moment. The goal is not a sterile, bacteria-free fridge. That is impossible, and it is not what you are aiming for. The goal is to keep conditions unfavorable enough that the organisms already in there cannot build up to the level where they damage your food quickly. Schaffner describes this in terms of log reductions. Lower bacterial counts by 1 log, and you have eliminated 90% of the bacteria present. Lower by 2 logs, and you are at 99%. Every one of these habits, the right temperature, immediate spill cleanup, and correct drawer use, moves you further along that scale. You never eliminate risk entirely. You reduce it to the point where it stops being a meaningful problem. If this changed how you think about what is happening inside your fridge right now, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week I cover exactly this kind of practical, expert-backed information that is genuinely useful in daily life, and share this with someone who has been frustrated watching expensive groceries go bad before they can use them. These 3 changes will make a real difference starting today.